All right, guys, welcome. So today we're talking specific versus theoretical evidence to support an argument. Now, both can do the trick, both can be effective, but it just really matters about the conversation, about the argument, about the situation in which you're arguing, right? So it's really a matter of which is appropriate at the particular time. Again, both can work, but you just want to pick and choose your battles when you implement them, okay? Now, let's take a look at this prompt where it reads, some individuals believe that the pursuit of perfection actually impedes improvement, okay? Defend or refute this argument. Now, initially, your gut might be telling you one way or the other. Your gut might be telling you, no way this is true. I cannot wait to sink my teeth into this argument and take it down, right? Conversely, you might say, it's absolutely right. Pursuit of perfection is toxic. But you want to think through your evidence first, and you want to make it an evidence-based argument, because if you purely just spout off on emotion and or how you feel, it's not going to go as well as maybe you would have imagined. All right. So again, we're about creating rational evidence-based arguments in here that really convince or persuade the other individual to think like you, right? The way to do that is to present them ideally with almost irrefutable fact, okay? So one way to do that is with specific evidence. So let's take a look at the student's thesis and then the body paragraph they use to support it. So this is how they are responding to this particular prompt. Even though the pursuit of perfection can be psychologically damaging, especially when it comes to one's education, for the most part, perfection helps individuals form goals and strive for excellence, especially in terms of athletics and personal intellectual pursuits. So they're clearly on one side, and it seems as if pursuit of perfection helps individuals form goals and strive for excellence. So that's where they agree. You'll notice that they acknowledge the other side, which is actually a really quality strategy. Acknowledge that the other side has a point, so that way they'll listen to you, and then you contend your particular side of the argument. Okay? So let's take a look at one of their body paragraphs for which they use specific evidence to support. Okay? So one's pursuit of perfection rarely renders perfect results, but sometimes the idea of that one shining moment where our efforts meet the moment perfectly helps us push ourselves to be our best selves. A little bit of redundancy in there, but that's okay. Again, we know what their argument is, that the pursuit of perfection rarely renders perfect results, but sometimes it really does shine through, and therefore the pursuit of perfection is worthwhile. So we know, again, they're supporting this argument that the pursuit of perfection is worth it. So take Jerry Rice, for instance. As a wide receiver starting his career in the NFL, Rice was not expected to become the Hall of Fame player he became by the end of his career, given his lanky frame and subpar speed. However, Rice would constantly strive to run perfect routes, even if by his own admission he never achieved perfection. Most of his route running was considered superior to that of his peers and the competition, leading to a wildly successful career. So they've hit us with specific evidence of when this pursuit of perfection, in this case Jerry Rice perfect route running, has led to very fruitful results, in this case a Hall of Fame football career. Now, obviously, not every one of us is a Hall of Fame football player. Additionally, none of us, or very few of us, are in the NFL. So how does that specific example relate to all people and this entire argument, right? How is this particular contention, for the most part, perfection helps individuals form goals and strive for excellence? Okay, how does Jerry Rice's example apply to, say, a student sitting in class, or someone going for a particular degree, or going for anything else? Like, basically, why does the evidence matter to this broader argument about humanity? And that's where this final bit of commentary comes into play. Similarly, athletes of all ages push for that perfect route, hit, spike, stride, and as a result become their best athletic selves, making the pursuit of perfection necessary for improvement in athletics. So what they've done is they've zoomed it out. They said, okay, Jerry Rice is a microcosm of all athletes and what all athletes strive to do to become their best selves, and they do it because they pursue perfection. They take nothing less, and therefore they end up being their best athletic selves. Okay? So that's a fairly quality argument. Now, conversely, you could also go with something a little bit more theoretical. Maybe you can't think of something specific in the moment, but you can think of sort of a universal truth, right, that applies to the situation and could support the argument. And again, the key is that your audience could see this evidence happening. So it's a little bit trickier in terms of the explanation because you might find yourself talking in circles. Whereas specific evidence, you go, okay, here's the specific moment. Why does it represent the broader point I'm trying to make? So let's look at this body paragraph, and this is going to be theoretical evidence. Perfection also serves as an excellent means to improvement with respect to scholarly tasks. So if we look back at the thesis, there it is. Perfection helps individuals form goals and strive for excellence, especially in terms of athletics. That's this paragraph. And personal intellectual pursuits. That's this paragraph. So, perfection also serves as an excellent means to improvement with respect to scholarly tasks. When people want to feel smarter or be perceived as such, they pursue education beyond what they already know. And when that learning really starts to take form and individuals feel enlightened, they continue to focus on perfection in that particular area. They'll rarely achieve perfection in that academic area, but the pursuit of perfection will render brilliant insights that the person still had not achieved before that point where they had decided to pursue mastery. So this is a little bit broad. It can be sort of specific. They could have gotten a little bit more specific. I think the moment is there where they point out how people pursue a master's or a PhD degree, or those who pursue a professorship and tenured professorship. But maybe they just weren't thinking in that moment, and that's fine, because this evidence makes sense. We could see this applied to any number of individuals looking to improve in academics. So here again, okay, why does this relate to the rest of humanity, or at least a major portion of it? As such, we see how the mind requires growth, which is ultimately spurred on by the pursuit of excellence in learned pursuits. So it's pretty decent commentary, maybe not the best, but it's decent commentary enough to illustrate how this kind of theoretical point of somebody pursuing education could represent the greater pursuit of perfection as something worthwhile. Now, regardless of whether or not you're going for specific evidence or theoretical evidence, what you have absolutely positively got to avoid is what's called hypothetical evidence. So let's take a look. So in open argument essays and arguments that you're just having with anybody, right, if you bring up a hypothetical, okay, it might be potentially realistic, but it hasn't happened yet. So with hypothetical evidence, you end up sort of committing this logical fallacy of diving into a situation that has not happened yet. In effect, you're almost kind of falling into the slippery slope fallacy, right? So that said, and in particular, those aspiring lawyers, hypothetical evidence is stricken from the record in courts, right? It has no place in medicine either. It really just is kind of a low way of arguing, right? So hypothetical framing of the argument sounds like the examples that, this example that we'll fix below. You got to keep an eye out. You want to avoid using words like if, or had they, or had this person done X, without blank, or would. Those are the key words that let you know that you might be committing a logical fallacy in terms of hypothetical evidence. So let's take a look at this hypothetical argument. In other words, the phrasing you will not be using, right, for your arguments. So if Malcolm X didn't take such a martial attitude against sanctioned racism, we wouldn't be where we are today as a diverse society, which is a sign of progress. Okay, it's quality-specific evidence, that makes sense, but, if Malcolm X didn't take such a martial attitude, we wouldn't be, how do you know that? Maybe somebody else steps up. Maybe attitudes begin to change a little bit more organically, but it takes a little bit longer. Or maybe, individuals potentially feel threatened by Malcolm. Again, there's so many different outcomes with this if that you want to avoid and just stick with what did happen. Okay? So, for instance, here's this exact sentence rephrased without hypothetical evidence. Malcolm X's martial attitude against sanctioned racism helped catalyze what was a stagnant movement to that point and ultimately supported a more diverse society we enjoy today, demonstrating just how progressive disobedience can be. So again, they took it away from the if he hadn't done this, this wouldn't have happened. Well, again, we don't know that, but what we do know is that the martial attitude did help catalyze what was a stagnant movement, and now we can launch into our argument, and it ultimately supported a more diverse society that we enjoy today and ultimately demonstrated just how progressive disobedience can be. So again, we're furthering the argument that disobedience is worthwhile and it does help society, right? Because we focused on a specific piece of evidence and we examined what it actually did, not what would have happened if it didn't. Okay? So, thanks for watching.